Imagine this. You buy expensive wood for your deck, and 3 years later, it's gray, rotten, and completely ruined. Why doesn't modern wood last 5 years, while medieval half-timbered houses have been standing for centuries? The answer lies in a forgotten secret of our ancestors, linseed oil. Not just any linseed oil, but linseed oil applied correctly, according to traditional craftsmanship. Today, I'll show you how to protect your wood for decades without chemicals and for little money. In the past, wood was a generational project. Grandfather built the fence, father repaired it, and grandson inherited it. Today, after 3 years, you buy a new one. That's not because everything was better in the past. It's because we've lost the knowledge. Modern wood comes from fast-growing plantations. These trees grow as tall in 20 years as they used to in 100. The problem? Fast growth means a loose structure. The wood is porous like a sponge. Water penetrates, fungi settle, and the wood rots from the inside out. The industry sells us the solution, pressure impregnation. The wood is pumped full of chemicals, copper, chromium, arsenic, toxic substances that are supposed to keep fungi and insects away. This works for a while, but these chemicals wash out. They end up in your garden, in the soil, in the groundwater, and best of all, the new environmentally friendly impregnations are even worse. They contain so much copper that normal screws are corroded away. You need stainless steel fasteners, which cost extra. Even so, the wood doesn't last any longer. It's a vicious circle. You buy expensive treated wood, and after a few years, it's ruined. You dispose of it as hazardous waste because of the chemicals, then buy new, expensive treated wood again. The industry profits, you pay, and the environment suffers. Medieval craftsmen did not have this problem. They had no chemicals, no pressure impregnation, no preservatives. Nevertheless, their wooden buildings are still standing today. How did they do it? The answer is simple. They understood how wood really works. They knew that wood does not need to be sealed like a plastic bottle. Wood needs to be able to breathe. At the same time, it needs protection from moisture and pests. Their solution was ingenious: linseed oil extracted from flax seeds, the same plant from which linen is made. Linseed oil penetrates deep into the wood. It does not clog the pores, but hardens inside them. The wood remains flexible, but becomes water repellent. Vikings soaked their ships in linseed oil. These ships crossed the Atlantic for centuries. Medieval farmers treated their tools with linseed oil. And many of these tools still work today. The secret never disappeared. It was only forgotten because industry convinced us that only expensive chemicals work. But the best solution is the simplest. Linseed oil, when used correctly, protects wood better than any modern treatment. Not all linseed oil is the same. That is the first point that medieval masters understood. There is raw linseed oil and boiled linseed oil. The difference determines success or failure. Raw linseed oil dries extremely slowly, sometimes taking months or even years. During this time, it remains sticky and attracts dust and dirt. Worse still, it can become rancid before it hardens. For our ancestors, raw linseed oil was only the raw material, not the finished solution. Cooked linseed oil is the secret. But be careful, today every hardware store sells cooked linseed oil that has never been cooked. Manufacturers mix raw linseed oil with metal salts that accelerate drying. This works, but it is not the same as real cooked linseed oil. Medieval craftsmen really did cook their linseed oil. They heated it for hours at a low temperature. This changes the molecular structure. The oil becomes thicker, stickier, and dries much faster. More importantly, it polymerizes better. This means that the oil molecules combine to form long chains and create a strong, flexible protective layer. In the Nordic countries, linseed oil was essential for survival. The Vikings built their longboats from oak planks. These ships had to survive at sea for months in storms and salt water. Their solution: they soaked each plank with boiled linseed oil. The oil penetrated deep into the wood fibers and made them water repellent. At the same time, the wood remained flexible enough to adapt to the waves. Archaeologists have excavated Viking ships that had been buried in the ground for over 1,000 years. The wood was still so well preserved that it was possible to detect the original linseed oil treatment 1,000 years underground, and the wood was still protected. But the Vikings weren't the only ones. Craftsmen all over Europe developed similar techniques. German carpenters treated their half-timbered houses with linseed oil. These houses are still standing today after 5, 6, or even 700 years. The wooden beams have darkened, but they are still in perfect condition. The secret lies in the way linseed oil reacts with wood. Other oils, such as olive oil or sunflower oil, always remain liquid. They can become rancid or wash out. Linseed oil is different. It is one of the drying oils, meaning it reacts with oxygen from the air and becomes solid. This reaction is called oxidation. The oil molecules combine with oxygen atoms to form long polymer chains. The result is no longer oil, but a type of plastic, a natural, flexible plastic that protects the wood from the inside out. The process takes weeks, but the result lasts for decades. The hardened linseed oil is water repellent but vapor permeable. The wood can breathe, but rainwater rolls off. Fungi and bacteria find no breeding ground, and insects avoid the treated wood. Medieval sources describe exactly how linseed oil was applied. Craftsmen heated it slightly to help it penetrate better. They applied it in thin layers and allowed each layer to dry completely. Sometimes they mixed in beeswax for extra shine and protection. This knowledge was widespread. Every farmer, every carpenter, every boat builder knew about linseed oil treatment. It was as natural as brushing your teeth is today. It was not until the 20th century, with the advent of the chemical industry, that this knowledge fell into oblivion. Today, craftsmen and DIY enthusiasts are rediscovering this ancient knowledge. They are realizing that linseed oil still works. It is cheaper than modern wood preservatives, non-toxic, and more durable. Our ancestors were right. Now it's getting practical. The secret of our ancestors was not only the right linseed oil, but also the right application. One mistake, and the whole project becomes a disaster. I'll show you the exact method that has worked for centuries. First, you need the right material, boiled linseed oil, not the stuff from the hardware store. You can recognize real boiled linseed oil by the fact that it is thicker and dries faster. In Sweden, there are still manufacturers who boil it according to old traditions. It costs more, but it's worth it. Alternatively, you can boil raw linseed oil yourself. Not really boil it, that would be dangerous. Just heat it carefully. You need an old pot that you will never use for cooking again. Pour in the raw linseed oil and heat to about 80 degrees Celsius. Do not heat it any higher, or it will catch fire. Stir for 2 hours and keep warm. The oil will become darker and more viscous. This is polymerization in action. But be careful, linseed oil can self-ignite. The rags you work with must be dipped in water or burned after use. Never throw them away dry. Medieval sources have already described this. Linseed oil rags can cause fires. Now, to the preparation of the wood. This is crucial. New wood must be sanded at least with 120 grit sandpaper. This opens the pores. Old weathered wood must be cleaned. The gray coating must be removed. Otherwise, the oil cannot penetrate. The golden trick of our ancestors: warm the linseed oil slightly before use. Not hot, just lukewarm. Warm oil is thinner and penetrates deeper. Medieval craftsmen placed their oil jugs in the sun or next to the fireplace. Step 1. Dilute for deep penetration. Pure linseed oil is too thick for the first coat. Our ancestors diluted it with turpentine. Today we use balsam turpentine, the real stuff made from pine resin. Mixing ratio: 1 part turpentine to 3 parts linseed oil. This thin mixture is absorbed by the wood like a sponge. Apply the first coat with a brush. Don't skimp. The wood should be thoroughly saturated. Be especially generous with end grain. The ends of the boards act like a bundle of straw. A lot of oil will disappear, but that's intentional. Wait 20 minutes, then comes the most important step. Wipe off all excess oil, really all of it. The wood should be saturated, but the surface must look dry. If you leave a shiny layer, it will become sticky and attract dirt. Step 2. Apply wet on wet. This is an old painter's trick. Before the first coat is completely dry, apply the second coat. The linseed oil in the first coat dissolves slightly, and the new coat bonds perfectly with it. The result is an even, deep impregnation. Use less or no turpentine for the second coat. The linseed oil should no longer penetrate so deeply, but form a protective layer. Apply again, allow to soak in, and wipe off excess oil. Step 3. Apply several thin layers instead of one thick layer. This is the secret to longevity. Each layer must dry completely before the next one is applied. In warm, dry weather, this takes 2 to 3 days. In humid weather, it takes a week. Patience pays off. 3 to 4 thin layers provide protection that lasts for decades. A thick layer will never harden properly and may flake off. The beeswax bonus. Medieval masters had another trick up their sleeves. After applying the final layer of linseed oil, they rubbed beeswax into the wood. The wax mixes with the still soft linseed oil to form a silky water-repellent surface. Dissolve beeswax in turpentine until a creamy paste forms. Apply with a rag and polish with a dry cloth. After an hour, the result is a warm, matte sheen that looks beautiful and feels good. The drying time is crucial. Linseed oil dries from the outside in. The surface may look dry after a day, but it is still soft inside. Wait at least a week before putting any weight on the wood. With thick beams, it can take a month for everything to harden completely. The result is worth the patience. The treated wood has a deep, warm color. It feels silky and smells pleasantly of linseed oil. Water beads off, but the wood can still breathe. This treatment lasts 20 to 30 years. Then, simply clean, sand lightly, and apply a new coat. That's how our ancestors did it. That's how it still works today. Simple, natural, and durable. Imagine never having to go to the hardware store again, desperately searching for the latest wood preservative. You know the feeling. You stand in front of the shelf with 100 different products, all promising the same thing, all costing a fortune. With linseed oil, that's a thing of the past. A liter of boiled linseed oil costs about €20 and is enough for 20 square meters of wood. Modern wood preservatives cost 3 times as much and last only half as long. The math is simple. Linseed oil costs cents, chemicals cost euros. But it's about more than money. It's about the feeling of self-sufficiency. You do it yourself, like your ancestors did. You don't need an industry to tell you what's good for you. You understand how it works. You see how the oil soaks into the wood. You feel how the surface becomes smooth. That's real craftsmanship. And then there's the environment. No toxins in the garden, no disposal as hazardous waste. Linseed oil is a foodstuff. You could drink it if you wanted to. You rinse the leftovers off the brush with soap, and you're done. But the best thing is its durability. Once done properly, it lasts for decades. Your children will inherit the wood you treat today, just like in the old days when things were built to last for generations. Nature developed the best solution thousands of years ago. The flax plant produces this wonderful oil that protects and nourishes wood. We just have to learn to look again and understand what has always been there. The medieval secret is no secret. It's simple knowledge that was almost lost. Linseed oil, when used correctly, protects your wood better than any modern chemical. Try it. Your wood will thank you. Subscribe for more forgotten secrets of self-sufficiency.